A Utah man jailed for 40 years for murder says he was wrongly convicted. Prosecutors have been seeking the death penalty, but new DNA testing could verify his claims of innocence. A judge originally sentenced Douglas Carter to death in 1985 for the murder of Eva Olison in Provo, Utah. But in 2025, the Utah Supreme Court granted him a new trial after it was revealed prosecutors bribed witnesses. And this year, Carter's attorneys say new DNA testing indicates that Carter's DNA does not match what was left at the crime scene. CBS News has reached out to the case's prosecutor for comment, but we have not heard back. But we are joined now by Neal Hamilton. He is one of the defense attorneys for Douglas Carter. Neal, thank you so much for joining us. For people who are unfamiliar with this case, tell us about its significance.
It's significant because the state of Utah has tried to execute an innocent man, and they continue to do so, even though we have evidence that is from the murderer, and that evidence does not match Doug. That has not stopped the state from continuing to seek not only his conviction, but his death.
The evidence that you guys have was recently analyzed in a crime lab, and the technicians were able to create some kind of DNA profile of the murderer. And why has that linked the case to anyone else?
We don't know yet. There are, in a capital case, there are far too many unknowns for us right now. We don't know if there's any other matches. What we do know is that our client, Doug Carter, has been in the CODIS registry. That's the national database the FBI maintains of violent offenders. He's been in there since 1995. There were 3 pieces of evidence. Again, we are very confident they came from the murderer, that this is the murderer's blood left at the crime scene. Those 3 pieces of evidence were run against CODIS twice. No matches were returned. To us, that is enough. The case should be dismissed. It confirms what Doug has always maintained, that he didn't do it. That is unfortunately not enough for the state, and we are proceeding with the case. Our goal is to see Doug go home to his family. 41 years has been taken from him, stolen, and that's enough.
So what happened to Carter's DNA testing, and why is it taking so long for the Utah Supreme Court to vacate that conviction and order a new trial?
Well, the Supreme Court vacated it based on something completely different. That the vacation of his sentence and conviction was based on prosecutorial and police misconduct. They threatened, they paid witnesses, and then they instructed them to lie about it. This is new. When we took the case over last summer, we filed several discovery requests. In March of this year, we were actually told by the prosecutor that the evidence we wanted to test has lost or been destroyed. And then at the end of June, literally out of the blue, we received a report from our state crime lab telling us that not only did this evidence exist, but that DNA profiles had been developed from 3 pieces of evidence that were reliable enough to be screened against CODIS. So we're scrambling to get caught up on this. This is all developing for us as well as everyone watching.
So the key witnesses that pointed to Carter, they did retract their testimonies, and they said that police basically paid them and threatened them, threatened to deport them, and told them what to say. But Carter did issue a confession that he signed. Explain that.
Yes, and that confession, we have a hearing to suppress that confession coming at the end of the month. Doug was interviewed for 2 days. During those 2 days, he said, I didn't do this. I had nothing to do with this. A friend of Doug's that he was staying with was arrested with him. And in between those 2 days of interviews, Doug was housed with a view of her. And this took place in Metropolitan, Tennessee, and they don't house men and women together. So Doug was literally kept with the front row seat of the consequences of his failure to confess. On the second day, the detective from Utah, George Pierpont, came, and 30 minutes later, he had a confession from Doug. Doug said, and has always said, that the only reason he confessed was to save his friend. Now, the problem with that confession is that Doug didn't know anything about the case. So Lieutenant Pierpont had to sit down with Doug and tell him what exactly he did. So we have a transcript of that confession, and the confession is Lieutenant Pierpont saying, and then you did this, right, Doug? And Doug would say, yeah, that's what I did. So Doug has never came forward and said, this is what I did. Others have set up for him. And these are the same people that threatened, coerced, paid, and then instructed witnesses to perjure themselves. This case from top to bottom is flawed. is deeply flawed, and that frankly it illustrates the problems of the death penalty in this nation.
So why are they still pursuing the death penalty, and what do you want to see happen next?
That is $1 million question. We would love to know the answer to that. I'm afraid that they're pursuing it because of pressure, because of political pressure. We know that Lieutenant Pierpont, his son, is involved in politics in the state of Utah. We know that the victim's family is adamant about this case, and rightfully so. They lost their loved one, and they've been told for 40 years that Doug did it. The reality is a hard thing for people to accept. We have nothing but love and sympathy for them and what they've gone through. As far as why the prosecutor insists on continuing, I don't know. We have an ethical obligation in Utah and throughout the country to not pursue a case that you don't believe is supported, that you don't believe there's a reasonable likelihood of conviction or that they did it. And we don't know. We wish we did know. I was disappointed that they didn't accept your invitation to speak. I wish they would talk about it. Our goal is, again, Doug needs to go home. Doug has family, he has brothers, sisters, he has children that he didn't know about until recently. He wants to go home. He wants to touch grass. He hasn't touched grass in 41 years. He wants to do that. And our goal is to see him do that.
Neal, and we're almost out of time, but he's been on death row for 41 years. What does his day-to-day life look like?
He sits in a room probably a quarter of the size of my office, and he stares at a wall. He's been kept in complete confinement, and on death row, you don't have cellmates. You are, again, sitting in a 6x6 cell, just staring at the wall if you're lucky.
We appreciate you sharing his story with us, and we'll continue to follow it. Neal Hamilton, thank you so much.
Thank you, Neal.
Thank you both.